Hello, everybody. I'm Nicholas Elliott, and I'm very pleased to be here with writer-director Maïwenn and actor Louis Garrel. Thank you. And we also have Lilia Pinot-Blouin helping out with interpretation. So I'll start right away with a few questions, both for Maïwenn and Louis, and then I'll open it up to questions from the audience. So Maïwenn, I'd like to start...
I'm so depressed, everybody left.
No.
I had one glass of red wine, so the truth comes now.
Well, we're going to have a very truthful...
Please come back.
We're going to have a truthful conversation. I think you'll see when we open it up to the audience that people love your movie. See? Thank you. Voilà. I'd like to start by asking you this. This is your fourth feature as a writer-director, but I was very interested to learn that this idea for this film was actually the first one that you had for a feature film quite a long time ago. Could you talk about how the idea came to you and then how 3 films came along before you realized it, and perhaps why this was the time to make it?
You know, sometimes usually I compare the reason why I make movies of, Comme ça? I compare when you fall in love, you don't really choose, you don't really know why you fall in love with this person instead of the other one, and that's life. You have the feeling that you can't choose. And this is how I feel when I want to make a movie. I don't have a feeling that I have to choose. It's just like this one, this actor, this story. And I wanted to make this love story for my first feature film, but I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't full of experiences. I needed to have more time. And I think it's because the reason is, I think when people, they love each other on the movies, it's very difficult to make it through, to make it real. En fait, en français, il y a une expression qui dit les gens heureux n'ont pas d'histoire. Ça fait tout de suite
mièvre. In French,
there's
an expression that says happy people have no history.
Et donc, c'était ça justement qui me bloquait. Parce que je me disais, ça va être mièvre des gens qui s'aiment au cinéma. Mais toute la partie où les gens se détestaient, enfin où le couple se déchire, je me sentais capable. Mais tout le début, je me sentais incapable. Et je ne voulais pas sauter l'étape où ils tombent amoureux. Parce que pour être touché quand ils se séparent, il fallait être touché quand ils tombent amoureux.
What blocked me was that I didn't feel confident about describing the first part when they were madly in love. The second part, when they hated each other and when the couple falls apart, that I felt I was capable of pulling it off a long time ago. But I feel that I didn't want to skip steps. You needed all the steps. In order to be touched and to feel close to the people when they finally split up, you also need to see the first part and believe the first part.
Another thing that's notable about this film in your career, Maïwenn, is that it's the first film that you've directed in which you've not acted. And so I wanted to ask you if you considered taking the part and what led you to not take the part, and then what the advantages and disadvantages of directing a film without being in it for the first time were.
Okay. En fait, à chaque film, j'ai envie d'améliorer le film d'avant.
Actually, for each movie, I feel like I want to improve the last movie I made.
Et pour celui-ci, je me suis dit, bah tiens, je vais voir ce que ça fait de ne pas jouer dedans, et je vais voir les avantages de ça.
And for this one, I said, look, I want to try to see what it's like not to act in it, and so that's what I want to try to direct only.
I thought it would be much better. I thought I would gagner du temps.
I would gain some time.
And rien ne s'est passé comme je pensais.
But actually, nothing happened the way I thought it would.
En fait, j'ai réalisé que quand on joue et qu'on réalise, je pense que Louis il peut avoir son avis aussi là-dessus, je me suis aperçue que c'est aussi une forme de direction d'acteur que de jouer avec eux.
Actually, I realized when you do both, when you're both the filmmaker and the actor, and Louis can also tell you something about that, it's also a way of working with the actors.
En fait, c'est que, si je devais donner une image, c'est comme si, vous savez, les musiciens, ils ont une clé de sol. Ça se dit clé de sol. Et ils prennent la clé de sol et ils font... Ils mettent à l'oreille comme ça.
If I can use an image, you know, musicians have a sol note key, and they use it. They click it to create a music, and that gives them the whole tone of the music.
Voilà, en fait, c'est ça pour les acteurs. C'est comme s'il y a quelqu'un qui donnait la clé de sol, qui donnait le ton.
So it works the same way with actors. It's as if there was somebody that gives them the right tune, the right note to follow.
So, Louis, as Maïwenn alluded to, you've recently had an experience as an actor-director. You directed yourself in the film Two Friends, which also screened at Rendez-Vous. I wonder if you could detect in being directed by Maïwenn any special sensitivity that an actress has in directing actors, or perhaps more largely, what her approach to directing actors is like.
Well, I don't know, because you know, Maïwenn, when she directs the actors, you know, she talks all the time. You know, usually, you know, when you do a film, you have like a scene, and then most of the time it's like one minute and 30 seconds or 2 minutes, and then we redo it like 10 or 12 times or 15 times or sometimes 20 times in the bad days, you know. But then Maïwenn, you do takes, but for 20 minutes improvisations. And so I mean, it was the first time that I was working like this, but behind the camera, I mean, she's very active. How do you say active? Yeah, she's very active, you know, and she talks, and she takes it's like if she were the lawyer of every characters. So when the character, you know, is speaking to another one, she said, "But you could say, you know, fuck you, because if you do this, I'm tell you this." And then for the other character also, "But you tell me this, but I can also tell you this." You know, all the time like this. So she's all the time with us, and she knows every characters, and so she can exactly, because when you improvise, sometimes you have a blank. You know, you don't know what to say, because at the time you get after 15 minutes the same situation, and you don't have any more, you know, how do you say, imagination. But she's there, Maïwenn, to give you some key or some clue. But it's funny because she was all the time, you know, she was telling me some a sentence to say, but I didn't want to say the sentence, so she wanted from me, because I didn't know, well, because me, you know, have my idea of the character, and she have the idea, and then the conflict makes the character appear. So sometimes, but she's, you know, she never quit. You know, she said, "No, tell it this." So I didn't tell the thing. She said, "No, tell this."
He imitates me like Chinese woman. It's so crazy.
So that's. Shh.
Maïwenn, I'm interested in asking you about the structure of the film. I find it very, very effective in two ways. The editing is very quick and elliptical. We go from one scene to the other very quickly, so that in a way I felt when watching it that I was pulled in to Georgio like Tony is. You don't have time to take a breath, in a sense. It's moving very quickly, but at the same time, we're going back and forth between the love story and her rehabilitation. So there's this, which gives us more distance on the love story. So I'm curious if you could talk about whether you structured that very carefully in the script, or if it started to come to you on the set, or if it's something that you found in the editing room, and in general, what your work in the editing room is like.
Voilà, many questions in one.
I'm sorry, whichever one you like.
Okay. Ouais, ouais, alors, non, le scénario, il était quand même construit comme ça, avec des allers-retours, back and forth.
The script was actually written that way, with the back and forth structure.
Mais ce qui est vite apparu dans les versions de montage et qui posait problème, c'est qu'on n'avait pas de compassion pour elle et on le trouvait tellement immense sympathique qu'on se disait mais c'est elle le problème.
But what turned out to be very apparent during the editing stage is that people were so drawn to the male character and didn't like her at all. And so people were inclined to say, well, she's the actual issue there.
Non, j'ai pas dit qu'il ne l'aimait pas, j'ai dit qu'il n'avait pas de compassion pour elle. Ouais.
There wasn't compassion for the woman.
Et comme le script n'était pas du tout pensé pour qu'on soit comment on dit, acquis à lui, du coup ça remettait en cause tout le problème du film en fait. Donc j'ai dû revoir toute la construction et chercher à quel moment on pouvait avoir de la compassion. Et j'ai trouvé, un jour j'ai mis le film complètement à l'envers et c'était une catastrophe, mais au moins j'avais trouvé le début. Et le début comme c'est maintenant, c'est grâce à ce jour-là où j'ai tout fait à l'envers. Je me suis aperçu tout de suite on était avec elle dès le départ.
So actually the script was written so that, the focal point was not supposed to be him. And the problem of the movie was that I really couldn't find that spot where people could find compassion for her. So at one point I sat down, I revised the entire script altogether, and what I thought I could do, and I did, was to edit it all backwards. So have a version of it where it was going backwards. And it was obviously a catastrophe, but it did allow me to figure out the exact spot where people would find compassion for her.
Maybe we'll open it up to questions from the audience, if there are any. And we don't have a microphone, so if you'd be so kind as to really project if you can. Any questions? I see a question in the back.
No, but now I know there is compassion, but when I was working on the editing process, they were all against her because she was always shouting on Georgio, and I didn't know how to find the good way to...
Because the way, for me anyway, now, the way, seeing it now, I think you have a lot of compassion for her, and you see why she's so pulled in.
No, I agree with you. I agree. Now the editing is working, yeah.
The problem was solved. I see a question down here.
Je pense que on peut trouver beaucoup de solutions aux problèmes grâce au montage.
I think we can find a lot of solutions to that problem in this editing.
I think the question is whether the film was shot in sequence or whether they were moving back and forth between locations. Is that right? Quel est l'ordre du tournage? Est-ce que vous avez tourné chronologiquement?
J'ai tourné dans l'ordre chronologique de l'histoire d'amour et j'ai tourné en premier les scènes de la rééducation.
I followed the logical order in terms of the love story part, but I started off by filming the entire part of the rehabilitation center.
Another question? I had seen someone down over here in the middle, please.
Thank you.
You said earlier, you were talking about the attitude, that people were responding, let's say, negatively to her, and they were very drawn to Georgio. Who was it that you were showing it to?
Who was what?
The question is, you said earlier that people were responding negatively to her and positively to Giorgio, so who were you showing the film to?
Mais c'est difficile d'imaginer peut-être maintenant, mais je prends ça comme un compliment, mais c'est vrai que dans les premières versions de montage, je ne trouvais pas le film.
It's difficult for you to imagine now because of the new version, but it is true that when I did my first cut of the editing, I just couldn't find the film.
En fait, le problème, c'est que Georgio prenait énormément de place. Il était très drôle, très beau, très charismatique. Et c'est vrai que c'est pas que j'avais des mauvais spectateurs, mais c'est vrai qu'on avait un problème à comprendre où était le problème, qui était le problème du couple.
You know, the Georgio character was very present, and he was so handsome and so funny and so charismatic that it's not that the viewers were wrong or couldn't get it, but it was really hard to tell where the problem was in that couple and who was the problem.
So, en fait, j'ai dû couper beaucoup de choses que j'aimais de Vincent pour le rendre un tout petit peu moins sympathique, et j'ai dû rester très proche d'elle. Mais rien qu'en trouvant déjà de mettre l'accident au tout début du film et d'être proche de sa douleur, déjà, en fait, ce truc-là a suffi pour qu'on se sente avec elle dès le départ et qu'on prenne Giorgio en grippe dès qu'il lui faisait du mal.
Actually, sadly, I had to cut a lot of scenes with Vincent, which I really loved. But I thought it was important for the viewers to feel closer to her from the very beginning. And I think that the idea of starting off with her accident was actually very helpful, because that does put the viewer in a place where you do feel closer to her, and you start understanding Giorgio when he is bad to her.
Oui, parce qu'à la base, dans le scénario, l'accident, il arrivait à la fin. Je voulais qu'on soit dans le suspense pendant tout le film, qu'on se dise, mais qu'est-ce qu'il lui a fait? Et l'accident arrivait à la toute fin.
Because actually, in the script, the accident came at the very end, because in the beginning, I wanted for people to be in this waiting mode, in this suspense mode, waiting to see, wondering, what did Georgia do to her? What was so bad?
Another question? Over here, please.
Can you tell us about your casting, how soon in the process you chose the actors you ended up with?
The question is about the casting and how early in the process the actors were selected.
I thought of Emmanuelle when I was writing, and at the beginning of the process of writing, and then Vincent Cassel also. And Louis, I was thinking of him for my last movies, but he didn't want to make it. And even this one, he said no first. So I had to shoot all the scene at the le Centre de Rééducation Rehab Center without Louis. And the actor was so horrible, so bad. So I came back in Paris, and Louis called me back and said, "How was it?" And I said, "It was horrible." And then we saw each other again, and he changed his mind. So I had... Après, j'avais l'acteur que je voulais, finalement.
And then I got the actor I wanted at last.
Mais j'ai quand même une scène ou deux avec le mauvais acteur.
But I have one or two scenes with the bad actor.
J'ai fait croire que c'était un ami dans le film après.
And so I made that pass off as a friend.
Louis, could you tell us a little bit about what decided you to eventually make the film and your approach to the character?
Ha ha ha.
No, Maïwenn, she invited me like to an appointment, and she told me, okay, my movie is about a love story and everything, huh? And then I felt that it's going to be, I could be linked to the movie, and because I'm very French, you know, I need to think about it, and then finally, you know, because I know actors who work with Maïwenn, this question of improvisation, I was afraid about, you know, not being so comfortable with this. And then finally I said to Maïwenn, I think you should take another actor and everything. And then after she starts to shoot, and then you don't know why, in the morning, one morning I said, it's stupid, because I mean, I wanted to make that with Maïwenn, and then finally I called her and she said, why did you say no? Because she's like this, because today she put makeup, she's very sweet, but she's very angry, you know, all the time. She's, you're an asshole. Why you doing? I said, okay. I said, okay, Maïwenn, like usual. I said, okay, please stop doing on my telephone. I come, and then we did the movie.
We have time for one more question, but before I take that question, I just want to announce that we've just learned that the film will be distributed by Film Movement here in the US, and it's going to be released on July 15th at Lincoln Plaza in New York. So if you like the film, please tell your friends, or I've seen it several times. I think it's worth visiting again. So.
And if you don't like the film,
but if
don't say anybody.
No! If you don't like the film, tell to your enemies. You know what I mean? That's the trick.
I see a question down here in the front row, please. This viewer didn't realize that Tony was a lawyer until late in the movie and wanted to know if this was intentional.
Maybe it's because you haven't listened. When they met, she says, I'm a lawyer. So you were sleepy or eating popcorn?
Thank you very much for staying for the Q&A. Please thank Louis Garrel and Maïwenn.
Thank you. Thank you.